Everyone, welcome to our Marvelous Monarchs class. I'm Ann Shellman, coordinator for the UC Cooperative Extension Master Gardeners in Stanislaus County. And we are excited to bring you this programming created by our Master Gardeners. A little bit about our program. If you're not familiar with the Master Gardeners, we extend research-based knowledge and information on home horticulture, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices, and we work with the public. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will introduce Denise Godbout Avant, one of our Master Gardeners.
Okay, thank you, Anne. So just to review what Rhonda and I are going to be talking about, our agenda will first cover some basics of the butterfly, their anatomy, metamorphosis, life cycle. We'll go over some local butterflies that you might see and how to attract them into your garden. And then we'll go specifically focus on the monarch, their life stage, migration, why they're endangered, and how you can help. And I do want to point out that neither Rhonda or I or other master gardeners, we are not entomologists. There will be places during this talk when you can ask questions, and we will do our best to answer them. If you can't, someone will get back to you. Okay, butterfly anatomy. Butterflies are part of the order Lepidoptera, along with moths. Lepido in Latin means scaly. The cara means wing, so it's a perfect name for them. They are insects. Like all insects, they have the three basic body parts: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen, and they have 6 legs. 2 pairs of wings. Most insects have 2 pairs of wings, but they're not always visible, but they are very clearly visible on butterflies. You have the forewings and the hind wing. And you can see up here the scale, a picture of their scales on their wings that are magnified. Okay. They also have a very unique part of their anatomy called proboscis, which is their tongue, a combination of a sponge and a sticky straw. When the pupa, and we'll talk more about their life metamorphosis stage in a moment, when the pupa is still in its chrysalis, the future proboscis is unzipped. When the adult butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, the 2 halves merge together into the tube-like proboscis. And you can see from the arrow here, you can see this curled up proboscis right here, and works like a straw. Okay. Butterflies undergo complete metamorphosis. That's different from incomplete. Incomplete would be like a grasshopper or praying mantis. When they hatch out of their egg, they just look like a tiny adult, and they just get bigger. Complete metamorphosis means the stages are very different. So they have four very distinct stages: the egg, which hatches to a caterpillar or larva, then changes to a pupa and liquefying their body while inside the pupal cage, and finally emerging into the adult butterfly. Adults are mostly nectar feeders. They're the only stage of butterflies to feed on flowers, and they're pollinators. Larvae or caterpillars eat plants, green leaves. Each life stage has a different requirement, and be aware that the environmental requirements and hazards are different for each stage. Being eaten or parasitized is a hazard at all stages. The egg needs a host plant for oviposition. That just means the position where the egg hangs or attaches itself to. The larval or caterpillar stage needs the correct host plant. Each species of butterflies have very specific host plants with enough leaves or food to grow to maturity. From the larval stage, they go into the pupal stage, which needs a protected place to pupate and develop. And finally, the adult stage needs nectar for flight and salt and mineral for nutrition and to mate. Okay, let's go look at each stage a little bit more closely. Yeah, you can see, okay, let's go back to the next slide. The larva caterpillar stage. All caterpillars need specific post-larval food source plants to survive. As I mentioned already, different species of butterfly have different specific food that they need. For example, Gulf fritillary eat passion vine. Morning cloak need willow, cottonwood, and ornamental elm. Pinkett ladies like mallow. Monarch eat milkweed, and we will talk more about this later. And you see a photograph here of the monarch larvae on narrow leaf milkweed, one of their food sources. Butterflies overwinter, surviving in various ways, depending upon the species, as egg, larva, pupal, or adult. And their butterflies are ectotherm, which means they're cold-blooded, so they cannot fly when it gets below 55 degrees Fahrenheit or when it is raining. So here's some examples of some different stages where they will overwinter. A Gulf fritillary egg, a Annie swallowtail larva, a painted lady pupa, and finally the monarch adult butterfly. So each of these species overwinter in those particular stages. Okay. Migration is another strategy for surviving winter. The two common migrating butterflies we see, of course, are monarchs. The Pacific population migrates south and west in the fall to winter over along our California coast, with the eastern population wintering in Mexico. Again, more of this later. Ancient ladies migrate to our area, Central Valley, from the desert in late winter, early spring. The life cycle of butterflies is very seasonal. Butterfly numbers start off low numbers in the spring, and they build up their number with successive generations, with egg laying, going through the life cycle, finally becoming adult. Their population, the adult population, peaks in September and October. Okay, any questions?
I don't believe I see any questions just yet. I thought that slide was really interesting about the, and see, I have seen this slideshow several times, but I didn't realize what you were saying here before, Denise, is that this is the stage that these particular butterflies overwinter in, which is really interesting. So, all right. Okay, I guess we will go on to the next part. Is that still you, Denise, or are we switching to Rhonda?
It'll be Rhonda.
Okay, so let me unmute Rhonda. Oops. We were hearing a lot of shuffling noises, so I had to mute you, Rhonda. I'm sorry. So now you need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. So I'm going to share with you what are some of the butterflies you might commonly see in our area, possibly in your gardens. A lot of the butterflies that you might see depend on what habitat you're providing. Some people have a variety of flowers that will draw them in. You might have neighbors with pollinator gardens, or you might be next to a wildlife area that they're attracted to, so that brings them in. So it kind of depends. Some butterflies are generalists. That means they will feed on a variety of flowers, and some are more specialists. They need a specific family of flower to feed on. They also like habitat where there's patches, so they can feed in one area for a longer period of time instead of having to move constantly. Sometimes butterflies don't move more than a few feet, just feed in one area. So there's a lot of factors. In our area, you'll see the Gulf fritillary a lot, which you see here in the picture. It's on a lantana. The Gulf fritillary might be confused with a monarch at times because of its orange and black coloring. It does have fairly large wings like a monarch. but you can see that there's no white spots on the edges like you would see on a monarch, so it's a little different. There's a quote here from a butterfly book called "The best thing you can do is provide them a good pub." Remember, they sip, the adults drink nectar. They don't have jaws to chew on leaves like larvae, so they need to have nectar. So the availability of host plants for the caterpillars will bring them in, and the nectar for the adults. So we need two kinds of plant sources for them. The nectar plants are what give them their energy and help them be strong, help them be able to fly very far, and to be able to reproduce. Host plants are just for the caterpillars. Usually those are the plants that the caterpillars eat the leaves, and they sometimes will only go to one kind of plant. For example, the monarch needs milkweed. There's others that have adapted to a wider range of plants, so they are generalists. For example, the painted lady goes to several different kinds of plants, such as pearly everlasting and thistle, which most of us would consider a natural weed, but they'll also go to hollyhocks and things in the mallow family. So the best thing we can do in our home landscapes is provide a diversity of plants for the different kinds of insects that might be there. They need egg-laying sites, so those would be the host plants. And they need some kind of a sheltered area where they can be undisturbed and pupate and possibly overwinter. Some of our butterflies do overwinter here. And of course, we need to provide pesticide-free areas because pesticides will kill them or harm the larvae. They also like sunny open areas so they can bask in the sun. Butterflies like to warm themselves by opening their wings wide and absorbing the heat. So a sunny spot would be best for the monarch. In the fall, we suggest that you leave litter for them, the leaf litter on the ground in your garden beds. For those kinds of insects that do overwinter here, it provides protection for them where they won't be seen by predators as well. So a layer of leaves is a positive thing in your yard for them. Tree cavities can be helpful. They like mud puddles. Butterflies, because they sip, they can also take nutrients from mud puddles. There's minerals in there that they need. They also will go to dung and tree sap and other kinds of liquid things that has a lot of minerals. It's not just nectar and flowers, but mud puddles have part of what they need as well. So egg laying is important when we want to help a butterfly that's endangered to survive. We cannot just provide nectar plants, which was what most of us probably have in our yards. Some of our butterflies have adapted to non-native plants for egg laying, but many of them need the native plants for their caterpillars. Many of our wetlands and grasslands have become agricultural areas, and many of those host plants have been wiped out. So there are not large areas for them to go to. Some of our people in our area have been out planting milkweed to help the monarchs have a place to go to feed, but generally most of the natural habitat is gone. It's hard to find thistles, for example, for the painted lady. Most of us don't want thistles in our yard, but half of the valley butterflies feed on weeds. That is what they need for their caterpillars. Some considerations when you're planting. You want to use plants that are native as much as possible because that'll support 3 times as many butterflies. There's much more nutrition, and they are also adapted with their body structures for the native plants. If you plant in masses of 3 feet or so, they'll have enough to forage on for a period of time without having to go far to look. Grasses can be a very helpful thing in your landscape too, because many of the butterflies will overwinter in them and use them as host plants. Make sure that you provide blooms that occur in the spring, summer, and fall, because the butterflies are active during those 3 seasons. They appear in our area usually in April, the butterflies, when they migrate, and they're here possibly in the summer, and then they start back on their migratory paths in the fall. So all those seasons, they need plants that are blooming at that time for the adults to have nectar. So there's different kinds of flowers that will attract the adult butterflies. Because of their long tube, they like things with that are tubular shaped that they can, use to stick in like a hummingbird tongue to sip up the sap or honeydew or whatever it is they're sipping on. So that's one kind of flower, is having like a California fuchsia, some of the different flowers you might have, some of the salvias that have the long tube would be a really great flower for the adult. In addition to that, on the next slide, we have these kind of flowers that are broad, the kind of daisy, the aster family. They like to sun themselves, so they need landing pads where they can sit in the sun and not only get food from the flower, but also rest or bask. So here's an example of some of the different shapes that will attract a butterfly. Butterflies like the bright orange and red and yellow flowers especially. Because a butterfly needs nectar during all of its life cycle, we need to provide nectar that gives them energy all year. A lot of us have flowers that bloom in the spring, but by summer, most of our flowers are gone. So it's important that we look for plants that can bloom at different times and kind of incorporate them into our landscapes. And as much as possible, try to provide native plants because they're more drought tolerant and they will survive during our summer heat. So look for those water-wise plants whenever you can. The nurseries usually mark them that way, so it's easy to find them. At our nurseries, we have a lot of new hybrids and cultivars that people love to buy because they're beautiful. They are grown specifically to attract people. Many of these flowers have double petals and different structures that draw us in, and we want to buy them, but they really don't have any nutrition. When they breed these flowers to become extra fancy, they breed the nutrition part out of it, the pollination part out of the plant. So even though we might like them, when you put them in your yard, and it might attract an insect, but it isn't going to feed that insect. So we have to be careful when we buy cultivars and hybrids. They're probably not getting the nutrition they need that they would get in a native plant. So ornamentals, just be cautious. You will see that in the nurseries, many new varieties every year, but for anybody who's studied native plants, they know that's not the ones that the insects prefer. So here again, we have some of the examples of the butterflies you might see in your yard. Swallowtail butterflies, which are beautiful butterflies. They're large. They have the black and light yellow coloring on them. The caterpillar is shown here at the top with the stripes. And then you see the egg on the bottom left. And on the right, you see the pupa. These butterflies are a little bit of specialists. They like things that are in the fennel family. They lay their eggs. The larvae need to feed in things that are in this family, which would be in the carrot family, parsley. Fennel, in the wild, there's a lot of fennel, wild parsleys that they feed on. So this is one beautiful butterfly most people enjoy seeing in their yard. On the next slide, we have Gulf fritillary, which is become very common in our area. They are specialists. They need the passion flower or passion vine. It is that beautiful purple centered flower that you see at the top there. When it closes its wings, you see the silvery spots on them. It's very beautiful butterfly, I have passion vines in both my front and backyard, and I have constant reproduction going on there with a little larva. You see that on the bottom right, the larva is a kind of an orangey red striped creature, and he looks a little prickly, but I never see the pupa. The larvae are so smart on how they hide those. They kind of look like a dried leaf, so they're very inconspicuous. You don't really notice them much. And the eggs are small, so and they're often laid on the back side of leaves and stems, so often we don't even see those. The larvae, they don't destroy plants, but you will see little bite marks in the leaves of the passion vine. And they need food for a couple of weeks. About 10 days is how long they feed. And then when they hatch out, we have these beautiful butterflies. So I have butterflies constantly in my yard. It's a lot of fun. Another butterfly that's very common in our area is the painted lady. And a lot of people may confuse this with a monarch because of the little white spots and the orange color. There's actually several in its family group that look similar, but they're variation of their spots and so on is the only way you can tell them apart. You kind of have to be an expert. But the basic painted lady is common. It is a migratory butterfly. It goes south when it gets cold. Sometimes we have outbreaks. Not this year, but last year we had an outbreak, so there were just thousands of them in our area. They have a kind of a plain-looking caterpillar you see there on the left. It's not very attractive, but it's a butterfly that has adapted to having several different plant hosts. So it'll go to thistles, pearly everlasting, the mallows. It's got a better chance at survival and reproducing than some that are specialists because of the fact that it does go to so many different plants in our landscapes. And of course, you see the pupa there on the right-hand side. So another common butterfly. Here are its relatives. These are called the Vanessa butterflies because they're all Vanessa species. And this shows you what they eat. Many of these are the wild weed-like plants that you might see, like nettles. But they're pretty well adapted. The one in the middle, the red admiral, is a beauty that we see quite often. It has the darker brown with the reddish orange stripes on the wings. But it's pretty common. Probably not as common as the painted lady, but it is. I see the West Coast lady and the American lady more infrequently, but they are a pretty common butterfly in California. Any questions about butterflies that we see?
We do have a couple of questions. And some of these maybe you're going to answer later, but we'll see. Debbie wants to know, can you describe the sheltering habitat for the butterflies?
I'm looking at that, but I think I'll click it off so I don't have to look at it. I have never used a bug hotel, and I don't think those are probably that great for butterflies myself, but what they need are trees and shrubs where there's a lot of a canopy for shelter. That would be in nature what they would go to. When butterflies migrate, they look for shelter where there's groves of trees with lots of a canopy to protect them from the elements. And in a landscape of your own, your home, that would be what they want too, trees and large shrubs that they could go to. So that would be my best suggestion. And also having some kind of a water source nearby would be helpful so they can get the nutrition, the water, and the minerals that they need.
Great. Another question. Sherry says, I typically take out my borage plants when they die back. Should I wait in case there are butterflies breeding?
That's a good question. I don't know when you take them out. In our area, the butterflies usually migrate through our area around October. So by November, most of the butterflies are out there overwintering sites. So depending on when you're taking them out, I would leave them until October for sure. But Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it might depend on the butterfly
Yeah.
and
And
where
some
they live.
butterflies stay longer, like the Gulf fritillary. We seem to have a lot of passion vines in our area. A lot of people are growing them because they are attractive. And
Mhm,
also MJC Nursery, our local nursery, is propagating them. So people are
mhm,
able to get those. So we do
mhm.
seem to have the fritillary around longer than some of the others. But usually the painted lady and the monarch are gone through our area around the October time.
Great. And then Eve asks, I thought we should cut down our milkweed plants in the winter to avoid spreading diseases. However, I have noticed some eggs and larvae. Lucky you, Eve. What to do?
Wow. It is a good idea. Actually, we don't want the butterflies laying their eggs when it's cold. If they do, the larva probably will not survive. The butterfly might be hopeful that this is their last chance to reproduce, so they're going to lay an egg because they see milkweed. But if it's getting cold at night, remember butterflies can't fly after 55 degrees, and the larva can freeze in cold weather. So it's good to keep that in mind. In the native garden that I work in, we cut down the milkweed in late October. Usually by then, all the butterflies have migrated through. If there are some stragglers, the thing you have to just be aware of is what is the temperature like, I would say. If it's cold, then even if they were to lay eggs or you see larvae, they may not survive. And the other thing about this is they have to have enough leaves to eat for at least 10 days or so. That's how long the larvae need to eat and grow bigger before they pupate. So if there isn't enough leaf material for them, they may not survive. So it's probably encouraging them to live in the time of year when they shouldn't be, possibly. Just something to
So,
think about.
Wanda, can this person save these insects by bringing them inside? And I mean, I
I've
don't know if
never
the
done that.
milkweed
I
plant
don't
is still
know.
going. Yeah, I don't know how you could, you'd
Maybe.
have to make sure, like you said, that if they hatch or
You
if
just have
they're
to make sure
still,
you have enough plant material for them
yeah,
to eat.
yeah. Well,
So,
good luck to them.
yeah.
We still have a few more questions, but I think some of them might pertain to plants, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later.
Okay.
So let's save those questions and we'll go ahead and move on to the rest of our slideshow if that works.
Okay,
Oh, Denise, you are muted.
my apology.
No
Okay.
worries.
Okay, I'm going to start talking now about the monarch butterfly, which of course is the main topic of this talk. They are the most recognized butterflies in the world, known for their amazing epic migration. Compared to other butterflies, they're very distinctive because of their coloring, but they're also larger. They tend to soar instead of fluttering, and they have very bright, easily visible wings. There are populations all over the world, including North America, Central America, South America, New Zealand, and Australia. They're much more prevalent in eastern United States, but are also found in the western United States, and we will be talking more about that later. Their range in North America is determined by milkweed distribution, which of course, as we talked about, the caterpillars need to feed on, with the furthest north being just north of Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. So we're going to go into more detail about the specific stages of the monarch butterfly. If you see any of these stages in your garden, leave them alone. It takes anywhere from 24 to 34 days to go from an egg to a doe. The egg is laid singly, usually one per milkweed plant, which helps ensure enough food for the larva when it hatches. And that's amazing to think about. For me, when you think about The total number of eggs laid by the female usually varies between 400 and 500. So she is laying 400 to 500 eggs on 400 to 500 plants, which is incredible. So we need a lot of milkweed out there. Excuse me. They usually lay on the bottom of the leaf near the top of the plant. The egg is the size of a grain of salt, so it's very, very tiny and very hard to see. It takes 3 to 5 days for the caterpillar to hatch once it's been laid. The next stage, of course, is the larva caterpillar stage. And you can see in the top photograph, it's emerging from the egg, which it eats. That's its first food source, full of protein. It will spend the next 10 to 14 days eating milkweed leaves. And it can literally strip the plant. That's how many leaves it will eat. It's a very hungry little critter. As it gets larger, it molts its exoskeleton. There are 5 molds, or what we call instar stages. And it gets bigger and bigger after each instar. It stops feeding before and after each mold. It grows from 1/16 of an inch. You can see a little tiny one right here down the bottom of your screen, and to about 2 inches. So that's quite a size expansion. A lot of growing there, which is why it needs a lot of food. Okay, so the next stage is the pupa stage. After its 5th instar, caterpillar starts wandering, looking for a suitable sheltered location to pupate. And as you can see here, it attaches itself with a button of silk that it comes out of the tail end of its body to anchor itself onto a surface, and it hangs in this J shape. It will create this chrysalis, which is essentially an exoskeleton or skin of the pupa. This will be its home for the next 11 to 15 days, where it basically liquefies and comes all back together again. As the time for emerging draws near, the chrysalis will begin to darken and the image of its wings will appear. And finally, the adult stage. In the final hours before it emerges, the chrysalis will become translucent. A crack will appear and the monarch will emerge. And you can see its wings are very shriveled. Its abdomen is swollen. Hanging from the chrysalis cage, it will spend the next few hours pumping the fluid into its wings from its abdomen. And it actually looks like blood, is that red color of blood. So start pumping that fluid into its wings until they are firm enough and dry enough to fly. So you can see the wings are coming out here. And during this time, the proboscis, that sticky straw that I have, those 2 halves will come together. Eventually, it will take flight after it dries out within a day and will start seeking out nectar for its first meal. Mating. These 2 butterflies, this is the male. And you can see these tiny little spots here. The female does not have those on the hind wings. These are scent glands. Sorry, my voice is a little croaky today. These are scent glands which produce a chemical used during courtship. We're not exactly sure how they use it, but obviously it must have some important role. Otherwise, the male wouldn't have those. So if the monarch will back up, and sorry, if the monarch is male, it will start looking for the female. Male can be aggressive, pursuing the female, taking her down. If the carrion is successful, they may remain attached for as long as 14 hours. They're both polygamous. They will be mating with several partners. Okay. Toxic milkweed. Milkweed is toxic. In addition to being the sole source of food to monarch butterfly caterpillars, once they eat that toxin, there's a milking latex within the milkweed. And once the caterpillar feeds on the milkweed, the toxin is present will offer them some protection, both during the caterpillar and adult phases, since it's poisonous or distasteful to many of their predators. These predators learn to recognize the monarch's distinctive coloring and striping, and thus will avoid them. And as Rhonda touched on before, there are quite a few copycats out there that are taking advantage of the monarch butterfly being distasteful or poisonous. And some examples here are the gold fritillary, the painted lady adult, the red admiral adult, and of course here you can compare them with the monarch adult. And this is also true of the caterpillar stage. And any swallowtail butterfly caterpillar looks very similar to the monarch caterpillar. Now monarch fly slowly, which helps distinguish them from gold fritillary and other butterflies who tend to flap their wings when monarchs tend to soar. And this is a big backtrack, sorry, my mistake. And I forgot to mention, which you probably already read, this is known in mimicry in biology. And this is an excellent example of that, of how other species will copy species that have some type of defensive mechanism. Okay, and moving on to questions. Are there any questions?
Okay, yes, we still have quite a few questions. And let's see, some are still about plants, so we're going to wait till you talk about those. In fact, I think most of these are all about plants wanting to know. So, and then a couple people are talking about kind of how to help them, or, you know, the legal ramifications about moving them, or, you know, is it illegal to bring them inside? Do you know about that, Denise or Rhonda?
Anything? I have not heard anything about that. Have you, Rhonda?
I believe that if a plant is on insect or an animal is on the endangered species list, you are not supposed to interfere with them. So
Okay.
I think we should be cautious about what we try to do other than providing food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because nature gives them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, sometimes they won't survive, but that is, you know, nature.
Right. Yep. Okay, well, we'll save those other questions because I know we are going to be talking about plants here in just a moment. So let's get started.
So I'm going to be talking about monarch migration, which is such a marvel, and I think is what gives the notoriety to the monarch is the long travel journey it takes from the north to the south. What a lot of people may not be aware of is there's actually two different groups of monarchs. There's the western group and there's the eastern group, and we are of course part of the western population, which starts in Canada. And these are butterflies that do not go over the Rocky Mountains. They stay on the western side of the Rocky Mountains. And they typically do not migrate to Mexico. The monarchs that we have in our area will fly north in search of food. And they'll travel sometimes 50 to 100 miles a day. And they overwinter on our coast. They seek shelter in the tall trees that grow along the coast, such as the eucalyptus and pines and cypress that grow there. They travel quite a distance. The ones on the east coast are really make a longer journey. They're up in Canada and they fly all the way through the middle part of the United States down towards the Gulf and into the fir forest of Mexico in Michoacan area. So anyway, it's quite a journey. There's only one generation of the butterfly that makes those long journeys. Most of the monarchs live for just a few weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks at the most. But the last generation that moves south lives for several months, and they're called the Methuselahs, which we'll get to in a minute. But the reason they don't survive very long is, first of all, there's predators, birds and lizards and things that eat them, but it's also weather, because they cannot fly in cold weather, so they are often killed when storms come. So they seem to know the route. This is the thing that amazes people, is how do they know where to go when nobody taught them? They didn't have a parent that showed them the way. So it is kind of a mystery, a marvel, just like their metamorphosis is such a marvel, how they can liquefy their bodies and change into a butterfly after, who can understand that? It's quite something. So anyway, the entire journey for a monarch, the last generation, can be quite a long journey, a couple thousand miles. Some of them in our area just may not go quite so far because they go along the coast from, say, Santa Cruz down to San Diego. There are several overwintering sites that they may go to. So here's the two populations again. So I got ahead of myself, but so the Rocky Mountains is what separates them. There's a lot more studies actually done on the eastern monarchs because there's a lot more of them than our western. Our western population is a smaller group, and they have got about 300 sites along our coast where they'll go to. And usually they start moving that direction between September and October. Most of them are actually in their overwintering sites by November, and they stay there till February, usually. So the first generation begins where they overwinter. The coastal ones begin to fly north, usually around the 1st of April. And when they're flying, the first generation will, first of all, mate. They will look for milkweed to lay eggs and start their journey north. The adults usually will mate before they leave their overwintering site because they have lots of opportunities to mate there, lots of butterflies. They lay their eggs on the milkweed as soon as they can find patches of it. And then by the 1st of May, that first generation will be gone. Their lifespan will be ended, and the next generation will be moving north and feeding on milkweed. So the cycle keeps going. Here's a map of the two different groups. Our population on the western side of the United States, it shows from the coast them moving in towards across the Sierras and up north. And then the eastern population, it shows them down by the Gulf and into Mexico and the directions they head east of the Rocky Mountains. So these are usually 3 or 4 generations that migrate north, and only the one that migrates south. So they don't live as long as people would think. Just 2 to 6 weeks is a maximum. And remember, there's a lot of hurdles along the way, weather, birds, things that prey on them, cars, kids with butterfly nets. No. So it is quite amazing how far they can go. We are lucky when we get to see them, but when we see them, it's usually in the April time when they take off, or in the October period when they're returning. Here's another map from the monarchwatch.org of the sites where they're located. The wintering site in Mexico, which you see at the bottom of the map there, is in the Michoacan state. They have an area where oyamel fir trees grow. There are big groups of them, and by far more butterflies overwinter there than anywhere along our coast. They're in the millions in the Mexican forest. They've had a lot of problems there, though, with illegal logging, and there's actually The government has had to get involved to protect those fir trees so that the monarchs have a chance to survive. But there's also a lot of corruption there. There was some report I read about one of the workers there in they call it the biosphere, where they're protected, was actually killed. And they think it's because the illegal loggers want to come in and get to those trees. And so the people who are trying to protect those trees are actually risking their lives sometimes. Along our coast, we have about 300 sites, where you see in blue there. Santa Cruz has sites, Morro Bay. Last month went to the site at Pismo Beach. It's one of the largest. There are approximately 30,000 butterflies at that site. And this recently, the one at Pacific Grove near Monterey had about 16,000 butterflies. So that's, right now about that's more than we've had for a couple of years. So they are doing better, but they're still so limited that there is a concern for them. The ones in Mexico, they're in the millions, but even there, the numbers have come down from what they used to be. So the maps kind of help. So the fourth generation, sometimes as a fifth generation, will come from possibly southern Canada or the northern United States in the late summer, but usually it's like September. They start coming through, and they have signals in nature that tell them when to go. The days get shorter, the nights are colder. Sometimes the milkweed is starting to die off. If they can't find the food and it's getting too cold, they know they have to move. And so there are all these signals to them about when to migrate. They just instinctively know. But they have to have milkweed if they're going to reproduce. So if there's no milkweed, they know they can't keep laying eggs and that they should migrate. Here's the map of them returning, going down. So we have the eastern monarchs going down. Sometimes they don't migrate all the way to Mexico. Sometimes they migrate to the Gulf, depending on if they got a late start or how the weather is. And there's actually a group in Florida that overwinters there. So obviously it would be quite hazardous for them to cross the ocean down there to get to the other side of Mexico anyway. So that was smart. And then our western side, when they come, they have to cross the Sierras, and I have seen them in the Sierras. Sometimes they're battered, they have holes in their wings, but they just have an instinct to keep going. And then if they survive, they will arrive at those overwintering sites where they are protected. They hover together in the tall trees that they find along the coast where they're sheltered, and they stay warm together by being in clusters that way. When you see those trees with the pictures of all the big clusters of monarchs, they do that to stay warm. They're not trying to find each other to mate. They're just trying to survive. So the Methuselah generation lives about 6 to 8 months, which is quite long, just like we had one person in the Bible who lived to be quite old, Methuselah. He's named after that. So they do not emerge from their chrysalis as mature butterflies. They're in diapause, so they do not start mating. They won't mate until the following spring, possibly February, before they're ready to go off on their journey. So they have to still have nectar to eat during the winter, so to keep themselves strong enough to survive. So they do look for, usually it's weed type plants, the native plants that they rely on through that period. After overwintering, then temperatures start to warm up, the days get longer, the butterflies know, they become sexually mature again, and then they leave their wintering sites after mating and start the cycle to go north. Here's another map. So you can see that there's quite a number of sites along our coast where there's habitat enough for them to overwinter. And so we're lucky that we don't live too far from some of those sites that we could go visit. I don't know if you know, there are some northern sites even near San Francisco, but not too many butterflies go there. But they have started keeping track along our coast and keep doing number counts. every year. Usually Thanksgiving, they do a count because that's the time when most all the butterflies would have arrived by Thanksgiving. Two of the most famous are Pacific Grove and Pismo Beach. I have been at both. Pacific Grove is a little bit smaller. If you go in early October, you may see nothing because the butterflies may not arrive by then. It probably hasn't been cold enough by then. So if you wait till November, you're more likely to see a good amount of butterflies in those cypress and pine trees in Pacific Grove. I went mid-November to Pismo Beach for the first time, and there's a lot of eucalyptus trees. There's also some cypress and pine, but it's mostly eucalyptus. And these are on public lands so that you can actually go visit them. They have telescopes there so you can look up at the tree clusters and see the butterflies up close. It's really amazing to see those big clusters in the trees. You will sometimes see them on the ground. If it's cold in the morning, they may not be able to fly, of course. So sometimes if they are on the ground, they're waiting for the weather to warm up. People who want to see them up close usually will go early. If you go in the afternoon when the sun comes out, the butterflies start to fly and they may go off looking for nectar. So that's, if you like to see them in the air flying around, then you might want to go in the afternoon. But a lot of people like to go early in the day when they're kind of warming themselves in the trees. In Mexico, the monarchs roost in the trees called the Oyamel fir. They're about 3,000 elevation there. There's hillsides that are covered with these trees, and it has a humidity they like too, so they don't dry out as much. And so it's the perfect climate for butterflies. And that's why there's so many butterflies that go there. Here are some names of some of the sites in California, some of our state parks that maybe you would like to go to and get a glimpse of them. Natural Bridges, New Brighton Beach, Point Lobos, Malero State Park, Morro Bay. The Pismo State Beach is the one I just recently went to, and it's one of the larger ones. All the way down to San Diego, we have all these sites. So you see it's Southern California because it's warmer there. The ones that show up first are probably coming from colder areas, the ones that arrive first. The ones that come later probably were not as far north. So they wait till it's cold before they move. So their arrival period might be because of where they were located, how far they had migrated to when it was necessary to start moving back. They often do go back to the same sites year after year. The butterflies just know where they are. Their parents didn't teach them. It's an instinctive thing that I don't think scientists really understand, but they often do return to the same sites year after year. Now, in July, a lot of us got a little nervous because they finally announced that our monarch butterfly is on the endangered species list. They call it the red list, which is threatened because mainly of the loss of habitat and partly climate change with droughts and so on. When you lose your food source, the milkweed, and they have nothing to reproduce with, then obviously they're not going to thrive. So it's at the point now where we have to start getting involved with planting milkweed to restore their habitat. Otherwise, they won't have a chance. When you look at the numbers, our Western population has the greatest risk because the numbers were already smaller. They've lost 99% of their original population. So that's pretty scary. And it's in the Eastern population, they shrunk by 84%, which is huge too. So knowing that they could someday become extinct is a kind of an eye-opener for us. A lot of people are getting involved now and showing concern. They want to do things in their own home landscapes to help them. There's new laws to protect them. Some of the laws that are now out there to protect them are about pesticide use. A lot of us were naively spraying pesticides around our homes to kill pests and not realizing that pesticide can kill any insect, any pollinator, not just the pests. So we have to be more cautious and be aware of what we've done to create this problem. And hopefully we can save them. There is still a chance they can become extinct. But as of July, it is now a worldwide concern. Here are some graphs we're going to share with you. This is the Thanksgiving count for the Western monarch. It shows you from a period of 1997 to 2020, and it has gone up a little bit since 2020. The green bar you see is the total number of butterflies. This used to be 1,200,000 here in 1997 on the left. And then if you go to the right, there's almost nothing down there, pretty close to zero for the numbers of how many butterflies were there. Now the line graph at the top shows how many sites were being monitored. So back in 1997, there were actually fewer sites that were being monitored, and they, started being worried about them way back then. But notice now, by 2020, we have more sites being monitored, but fewer monarchs being found. So that tells us we have a problem. We're doing a better job of monitoring sites, but finding fewer and fewer butterflies. So this is a chart that can get our attention. Here's another chart of the overwintering. So the bars we see this is about land area. How much land area are they taking up? For example, in a forest, is there a small group of trees that they're in, or is it a larger? So you can see it's varied over the years. This is from 1994 all the way to 2020, I believe. So it kind of gives us an idea of the, kind of traumatic change that is going on within the butterfly populations at their overwintering sites. This is from Mexico. And this is done by the monarchwatch.org, which does a lot of research on conservation for the butterfly. Questions about migration?
Okay, we do have some questions.
Okay.
And let's see, Ward is asking, in the summer, if monarchs aren't migrating, do they remain in one area, or do they travel significant distances looking for milkweed?
Well, in the summer, they will travel quite a distance looking for milkweed, because if they're going to stay in that area, that means they're probably reproducing. That's the main goal of a butterfly, is to continue its species, just like other insects. So they're looking
for the milkweed, that are going to keep moving and laying their egg.
Yep. So they should be in the summertime looking for food, nectar, and also laying eggs. They lay hundreds of eggs, and they don't lay them on one plant. They spread them around. So they keep looking for milkweed. They'll travel quite a distance to look for it too. But by late fall, they should be moving on, because the cold will kill them if they don't. I don't know if that hopefully that answers your question.
Hopefully.
But I don't think they stay necessarily in one spot, no. I think they would keep looking and travel a distance, yeah.
Brent and Dorothy want to know, if the first generation of monarchs lay their eggs at the beginning of their journey, do they also lay eggs at the end of the first leg of their journey?
Yeah, because as we've already established, they keep moving and looking for milkweed plants, and only one egg per milkweed plant, so they're going to keep moving north as long as they keep finding plants. Yeah.
And then someone was concerned, is milkweed a problem for dogs? So it is a good question, because milkweed is considered a toxic plant.
I always hear this question, and I'm always kind of surprised. You think about how many plants in our environment are toxic. Most animals won't eat anything that doesn't taste good. Milkweed is so bitter that cattle won't touch it. They'd have to be starving to death before they would eat it in a field. It's that bitter. So it's really not palatable to animals much. So I would not worry about it. But if you had a puppy, for example, that chews on everything just to chew on it, you might be a little more worried, but they probably would just spit it out. They would have to ingest a bit before it would do much harm, but it could make them sick for sure. It would definitely maybe make them throw up or something.
Mhm. And let's do one last question. Why do these butterflies hang out on eucalyptus trees if they only feed on milkweed? Is it just for shelter?
Yes, they are there for the canopy of those trees. The trees have large canopies, and it can provide a shelter for a large number of butterflies. And it's also a tall tree that they can see when they're flying and know where they're going to get to that forest. For them, that is a forest. We may not see it that way, but it's mainly the canopy that those trees provide that shelters them through the cold weather.
And then one of our writers wrote in to say they live in the San Francisco Bay Area and there's a documented population of monarchs that don't migrate, and she provided an article. So if anybody wants to read that, they can take a look. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to how you can help.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so before we go on into how you can help, I want to add one thing on the migration. I learned something recently. We were about 2-3 weeks ago, we were in Oahu and we went to a native plant botanical garden, and there were some milkweed there and there were monarchs there. So very tattered looking, but they were there and they were feeding on the nectar of the milkweed plant flowers that were blooming, and other plants that were in the garden. So somehow, I'm assuming these are the western monarchs, and somehow they got blown out across the ocean and ended up in Hawaii. So I was talking to one of the ghosts at the garden, and she said, yes, every year they always get a few. So I thought that was quite interesting. So anyway, okay, so moving on, how you can help. We all want to help the monarchs. Their populations do go up and down over the years. Some years are worse than others, and that's very natural in nature with everything. Everything has its rhythm going up and down. But at the same time, there are a lot of challenges against them. And so we want to help in every way we can. And of course, for the adults, the number one way is planting nectar plant flowers. Especially native plants, which tend to have more nectar, and the nectar tends to be more nutritious. Native plants with tubular or funnel shape are particularly attractive. And remember, you want plants that bloom through the season. You know, that plant that blooms in spring, summer, and fall. Always have something that's blooming, so there's always something there. And here are some excellent examples. These are all native plants. Some of my favorites are the California buckwheat, goldenrod, any kind of sage. Sages are always great. Coyote bush, California fuchsia. And one of the things that's so wonderful about all these plants is they're attractive to other insects and birds, especially hummingbirds, as well as butterflies and monarch butterflies. Ceanothus is a great one. I have a ceanothus that's blooming right now. Rabbit bush, lupin, and western redbud. So these are all great native plants. Now, there's also readily available plants at your local nursery, which are not native, but they're also very attractive to butterflies, monarch butterflies, that provide a good source of nectar. And again, salvias are always a dependable plant. Honeysuckle is another one. Mexican sage, which is in the salvia group. Sunflowers, asters, yarrow, blanket flowers, and cone flowers. These are cone flowers down here. The salvias or sunflowers, and let's see, somewhere there's some yarrow. Yeah, here's yarrow. So all of these are great plants to have in your yard that are not necessarily native, but are very attractive to butterflies. And we want to plant a variety of milkweed species because as we have established, monarch caterpillars feed only on milkweed plants. And milkweed is a genus of herbaceous perennial flowering plant that's named for that latex milky substance, which is exuded when the plant is damaged. It can be toxic to humans and many other species. Let's emphasize it can be. You would have to ingest a lot of it. Most of it is very bitter tasting. As Rhonda was talking about with the dog puppy, if they manage to get taste a little bit of it, it might make them sick, but it's more than likely not going to kill them. So several native local varieties include narrow leaf milkweed, which is right here, obviously has narrow leaf. Showy milkweed, which is known for very broad, big leaf. Common milkweed and heartweed milkweed are some good local native varieties. When possible, plant from seed or buy from a reputable source. Excuse me. Since some plants labeled wildlife friendly may be contaminated with pesticides. The best time to plant is in the fall when it's cooler and at the start of the rainy season. Tropical milkweed, some of you may have heard of it, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. It is a non-native milkweed plant that has been designated as a noxious weed by California's Department of Food and Agriculture. Some counties have banned the sale of tropical milkweed in their nurseries. It is a very attractive plant that is a good source of nectar for many other insects. Bees love it. And monarch will lay their eggs on because it is a milkweed. But the issue that has been established by research is because it blooms year round, unlike native milkweed, it could confuse monarch adults to staying year round at a time for when they should be migrating. Sorry, my voice is getting croaky. If you do have tropical milkweed, some recommend maybe cut back to the ground twice during the growing season, so not to interfere with migration and egg laying, so that the butterflies will keep moving north. Okay. And the other issue is it is a host plant to a protozoa and parasite. It's a big long name that I'm not going to say, but we abbreviate it as OE. There is some evidence that these spores can negatively affect monarchs. As the caterpillars eat the plant, they're ingesting that the latex in the plant, and they ingest the spores, becoming infected. And then, of course, the caterpillar eventually hatch into adults. And these spores are carried by the adult, thus spreading the parasite. Evidence shows that the OE infection may be reducing migration success by reducing the body mass, reducing their lifespan, their mating success, and flight ability. Monarchs are already in trouble. So anything that makes things more difficult for them is not a good thing. We want to find ways to increase their ability to survive. Native milkweed, unlike tropical milkweed, die back after blooming. Sorry. Causing the parasite to die with it. This ensures. Okay, Ron, I'm going to take over. Sorry.
Yes, when the native milkweed dies back, the parasite dies. So in the next growth period, the monarch will be feeding on fresh parasite-free foliage, which is a plus to ensure their health. When we have the tropical milkweed that never gets cut back or die back, it continues the spread of the parasite. So this is why a lot of counties are outlawing it or banning it. And we encourage people who do grow it, because it's an attractive plant, to please cut it back. We don't want the monarchs to not migrate because they have found a food source. Thank you. Another thing you can do to help for sure is by reducing pesticide use. This is one of the biggest problems in our landscapes is the overuse of pesticides. There are a lot of products you can buy to help with pests that are not as detrimental to the butterflies. The neonicotinoid chemicals are systemic. They'll destroy their nervous system, making it hard for them to fly or to reproduce. So those are things that we should avoid. You need to also read labels to see what's in them. Horticultural oils and insecticidal soaps are things that our Master Gardener group recommends. Also try to spray at a time when insects are not usually active, early in the morning or in the evening when pollinators are not there. And remember, if you're doing this to protect monarchs, you're also protecting the other pollinators. We have huge problems with bumblebees being also exterminated. Their groups have fallen greatly and they're also endangered. They don't get as much publicity because they're not as big and showy as a monarch, but our bumblebees who are pollinating many of our crops are in great peril. So anything you do to reduce pesticide will help our other pollinators. And please go to the ipm.ucanr.edu website to learn more about the use of pesticides. Another thing you could do is get involved with the Western Monarch Count, which they do every fall. They have sites all along the coast you can sign up for, and here's a website you could go to get involved. You have to kind of sign up and let them know. They have a little training how they do it. And what I've heard is they have people go out and they count a group, like one cluster on the tree, and they get an estimate for that, and then they multiply it by how many clusters are on the tree and sort. Anyway, there's a whole training that goes with how to do a count. But this is a way that people who live in different areas can participate in research and helping the monarch by learning more about where the numbers are going down and where the numbers are going up and that sort of thing. Tagging is also something that's going on. They have these little tiny tags on the wings, and it's really cool if you go to a monarch site and find one of those. But volunteers are actually tagging monarchs when they migrate. They capture them and record their tag codes. And so people, especially photographers who are taking pictures, can see the code and know it'll tell where the monarch came from, where it was tagged, and where it ended up. So they learn a lot by doing this, just like sometimes they do with birds and other things. But this has been going on since 1992, the monarchwatch.org group. You could also get involved with that. Be fun. In addition to planting milkweed, we are trying in our area to create a milkweed corridor, which is planting milkweed in areas where it should be natural, spreading along rivers or different areas, wildlife areas, so that the monarchs have a pathway. When they're on their migratory path, they will be able to have patches of milkweed through that area. They do not want milkweed planted often on the coast where they will actually overwinter, because they do not want to encourage the monarchs to reproduce during the winter there. But if you're at least 15 miles away from the coast, I believe habitat can be created and connected in those areas. Working with organizations too is another thing we could do, is get some of our local, Native Plant Society, Audubon Society, whoever local conservation groups we know of in our areas to connect and kind of create these corridors. It doesn't have to be just individuals, but get involved with some groups. By the way, the Western, maybe go back just for a second, Ann. Our Western population, and especially the Central Valley area, is the #1 priority for planting native plants or nectar plants for the monarch, because we have the lowest numbers. So it is the #1 priority area, not so much on the East Coast, but here in California, the Central Valley is the #1 priority area for the stopovers for the monarch. If you would like to see a native plant garden to get ideas about what to plant for monarchs, you could visit the La Loma Native Garden, which is in Modesto at 1805 Encina Avenue. There's quite a variety of native plants there, and also milkweed. You could also go up to the UC Davis Arboretum. They have big patches of milkweed there and other native plants to look at, as well as other, they have Mediterranean and other kind of plants there too. It's a beautiful place to go, but they have a large native plant area that you could visit. I would like to recommend on this list a couple of resources. These are all very good. I don't know if you can see my handout, but this is the handout from the Xerces Society. They actually produce a list of the plants for pollinators for our area in the Central Valley, which ones would thrive in our heat and in lack of water and so on. And they also, and it's 2 pages, they also put out a publication for inland California, and this talks about the monarch, what the nectar sources should be for the monarch and the milkweeds. It's a very good resource to read, and it talks about avoiding those insecticides and that sort of thing, how to get organic plants, how to talk to the nurseries, because what we're finding is when they research where milkweed is being distributed in nurseries, many of the nursery growers, unfortunately, you would think it would be safe for the monarchs, but they are actually producing milkweed that is sprayed with insecticide, because nursery growers, their main goal is to sell, to make money, and they want to prevent the milkweed from getting pests on it, so they use it in their productions. They use these chemicals that will actually harm them. So by buying that, we are actually undoing all the good that we could do by planting milkweed. So my suggestion is you get seeds and not trust your nursery. But if you have a good relationship with your nursery people, ask them to buy from organic growers. Most of them do not grow it themselves. They buy it from growers. We have some local nursery people who are excellent, that are very conscientious about doing that, but not always. It may say pollinator friendly on the label, but they have done samples all over the United States at these nurseries with pollinator friendly labels, and they have still found evidence of these chemicals in every single plant. So that would be my big caution to people who are gardeners here. But look for these handouts. Xerces Society is one of the best. UC Davis Arboretum has a very good resource on their site. And also our own Master Gardener group in Santa Clara County, let me find my handout, has put together this wonderful list of plants for different butterflies. What are their host plants? It's really excellent. It's very thorough. It'll tell you which of our native plants would be good for which butterflies you want to attract. And it's just good anyway to know what butterflies need for good nutrition. So there's a lot of great resources here on this page. The Monarch Joint Venture Group does a lot of great work. You can go to the California Native Plant Society and the CalScape to see pictures of how to garden with native plants and what they recommend for your area. So I think these are all excellent. There's really a lot of resources out there now, so it's not hard to find this information if you're looking. Here are some really good books. The one that you see first, Four Wings and a Prayer by Sue Halpern, is an entomologist, and they've done some research on the monarch migration. The second book, Kaylee Baumley, she did a really nice little resource book all about the monarch. It talks about their life cycle and milkweed and all that. The third book, The Flight Behavior, is actually a work of fiction, but Barbara Kingsolver has done a lot of research on the butterfly, and she gives a scenario of butterflies that during their migration, what they go through. It's a very interesting book to read. And then the fourth one, Journey's Flight. This would be a good book for students. So these are just a few. There's quite a few out there now. Here's a list of some overwintering sites you might want to visit. In our area, a lot of people like to go to the one in Pacific Grove. It's kind of well known. But Santa Cruz would be fairly close. And I definitely recommend the one at Pismo Beach. Is the largest, I believe. 30,000 butterflies there this year. Some people think that the monarchs are okay now because they're coming back, but remember, 10 years ago, butterflies were in the hundreds of thousands in our area, and now we're down to not even anywhere near that. So there's still danger of them dying off if we don't do things to change our ways. Last year, there were 29,000 left in California. And the year before that, it was 192,000. And 3 years ago, it was 300,000. So you can see the huge decline in just a few years. In the 80s, it was 4.5 million. We're not anywhere near that now. So we do need to do something. We have the science. We have the answers. It's up to us to take action. That would be my message for today. So, Anne?
Yes, so some of you who are not master gardeners will receive an email in about 3 months asking a couple questions we hope that you will answer. And we want to thank everybody for joining us on this presentation. We do still have time left for some questions. And let me see here. I think this is a great question. Is it too late to plant milkweed from seed right now?
No, it's perfect. Anytime now, during the winter when this possible rain will fall, the seeds can sprout and get their roots established. Most native plants have deep roots and they need to get established during the rainy season. It's best not to wait till early spring to plant them so they can get established better. For seeds.
So hope to see or hope to hear about lots of you getting out there to plant.
Yes.
And Ward had a recommendation for a book, Monarchs and Milkweed by Anurag Agrawal is an excellent book. Okay, what else here? So Sherry's asking about a particular source for buying milkweed seeds. I would just say, look up the source, trust your, make sure it's a source that, is growing the right kind of milkweed for your area, but we can't really recommend any specific company. Let's see, somebody was asking how high milkweeds fly because they were worried because they live near a wind farm. Do they fly high enough to get damaged by the turbines? That's kind of
yes, they can.
They can. Okay.
Yes, they fly high.
Okay, and then there were some questions at the beginning about varieties of grasses that allow butterflies to overwinter. Are there any native grasses? And then this person is saying many need a lot of water to survive, like juncus. With watering restrictions where I live, this might be difficult.
There are a lot of native grasses. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there are some companies that sell native grass seed that you can get them started from. It's a little harder to find them at a regular nursery, but anything in the deergrass family, the Mugenbergia, would be a good variety. There's also alkali sacatan is a large native grass that would be a good overwintering site for a butterfly. And then the Buddleia gracilius is another nice one that's a little smaller. Blue grama grass, maybe that name sounds familiar. You might be able to find that some of the nurseries.
Yeah, and I think, so I had posted in the chat, and I will post again when we email everybody a copy of this presentation, so you will get a copy. so that you can see the plants that were listed. Also, the Xerxes Society, I'll send a link to that so you can find specific plants for your region. And let's see. Yeah, so we have answered quite a few of these questions. So, going back to the pesticide question, someone is asking how you use organic pesticide. And they bring up a really good point because, believe it or not, I believe there was someone was telling me that someone had planted a butterfly garden and they couldn't understand why they didn't have any butterflies, and they were using BT, which is organic, which is a naturally occurring pesticide. However, it is still a pesticide. So anytime you see the word organic, just remember it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not toxic, that it couldn't be poisonous. So you have to really do your homework if you are using any kind of pesticides in your yard.
Thank you, Ann.
So yeah, always check. And the UCIPM website has a great bit of information there on, you can look up all the different kinds of pesticides, and you can see their toxicity to bees, which is kind of like the canary in the coal mine, to see how toxic it is to other
That
critters.
is a very helpful site. I would recommend people try to look at that.
And I'm sure I know a lot of people get very annoyed by the aphids that hang out on milkweed. They're orange. They're called oleander aphids. And while my plants are small, I go out and I just squish them, or you can, hose them off.
Yeah, that is one of the detriments of milkweed. It's very susceptible to the aphids. I wish people would quit planting oleanders. The problem
Well,
with
we can't do a
oleander,
whole lot about that.
these are oleander aphids, and unfortunately, the native insects, our beneficial insects like ladybugs, don't like to eat the oleander aphids. Normally they would, but they're full of toxins that they won't.
That's why there's so many on the
Yes.
plant. Yeah, so
So,
the best thing to do is just to keep an eye on it and be out
yeah,
there all
wash them
the
off.
way.
Yeah.
And then Elvira asked a good question. Have you ever heard of Monarch way stations?
Well, that's what we were talking about with creating these corridors.
Okay.
A Monarch way station is simply providing a habitat in the areas where they migrate through so that they have feeding areas. So we're kind of replacing the natural habitat that was there before farming came in or development, and giving them patches of food to forage in. And so if it's along their migratory route, they have a way station where they can stop and eat. That's all that means.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. All right, someone was thanking us for a very comprehensive presentation. And I just want to say a special thank you to both our speakers, Rhonda and Denise, who both have amazing backgrounds in science and work with these butterflies. So this is not just a presentation that was put together lightly. It's based on a lot of research and hard work. So thank you to both of them, and for this wonderful presentation. And thank you to everyone joining us. We know that you're on here because you care about monarchs, and we believe that we can all make a difference. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Anne.